Hello friends, welcome in this series of master classes in direct taxes. Today we shall be discussing the newly introduced penalty under section 271 AAD of the Income Tax Act 1961 as introduced by the Finance Act 2020. Before beginning our today's lecture, let's invoke the divine presence of our master. We will sit for a few seconds in his remembrance so that whatever we learn today, we imbibe it. Let's close our eyes for a few seconds. Let's feel his divine presence in our heart. Hello friends, this is CA Vaibhav Goyal and we shall be looking into each and every aspect of section 271 AAD, be it the ambit of section or be it the boundaries, whether it transcends the civil remedy into a criminal nature. We shall be discussing every aspect of it in this today's video. And I have designed this lecture in such a way that we shall be trying to analyze this section by word. Alright, so what is this subsection 1? Subsection 1 says, without prejudice to any other provisions of this act. This clearly, the words in green suggest that the limitations of this section or the penalty or the contours introduced by this section are in addition to what has been prescribed under any other provisions of this act. Meaning thereby, if section 270 capital A subsection 9 prescribes a penalty, prescribes an entry wherein it is a misreporting or an underreporting and a penalty is leviable under that section, that penalty is still leviable in addition to this penalty. Alright, the simple meaning is this. If we go by the simple meaning of the word without prejudice, it simply says whatever has been said in any other part of this section will not get affected by the introduction of this penalty. Meaning thereby both provisions would operate simultaneously. Now somebody would argue whether the two provisions which are in same sphere, whether it is technically feasible, that is, for a same offense, can I be prosecuted twice? We will see it after we will analyze whether it is in the nature of a civil liability or a criminal liability. You would be saying that I am talking something nonsense. Why? Because we are learning a penalty in an Income Tax Act which is by its nature civil in nature. Alright, so you would be thinking I am talking something nonsense, but when we will be delving into the meaning of the word false entry as used in this section, you would come to know, or you would explore that what is civil is no more civil and it has become a criminal liability. And how this has become a criminal liability, we will be discussing in this today's lecture. Alright, so the prima facie meaning of this word without prejudice goes that this penalty is in addition to all the penalties prescribed under any other sections of this act. If during, another important word, during any proceeding under this act. what is important is that the penalty can be levied only if there is some proceeding under this act. And what is the importance of this word, any proceeding under this act, we will be exploring after we read the whole subsection 1. Alright, it is found that in the books of accounts maintained by any person, another important word, any person, there is a false entry or an omission of any entry which is relevant for the computation of total income of such person to evade tax liability. The assessing officer may direct that such person shall pay by way of penalty a sum equal to the aggregate amount of such false or omitted entry. If we go and broadly underline what are the important points of this subsection 1. Number 1, that it has to be levied in addition to existing penalties. Number 2, the penalty can be levied only if during any proceeding under this act there is the satisfaction that there is the false entry or there is an omission of an entry. Then the assessing officer can direct that such person shall pay an amount equal to the aggregate amount of false or omitted entry. Meaning thereby, if and as any person records 1 crore rupees as false entry in his books or omits to record 1 crore rupees as entry in its books, it will be liable to pay a penalty equivalent to that amount. Now, what is the meaning of this term, any proceeding under this act? Suppose we have to understand the basic purpose with which this section has been brought in. Section 271 AAD has been brought in by our Honorable Finance Minister Shrimati Nirmala Sitharaman ji, saying that there has been a rampant racket of fake and fraudulent invoicing. So what is the effect of fake and fraudulent invoicing? That is, somebody issues a fake invoice without actual movement of goods or services, so the person actually receiving the invoice without actual receipt of goods actually reduces its GST liability or claims fraudulent refund. Remember, it claims fraudulent refund of the ITC, because in GST Act there is a provision of refund of ITC. So what is the racket doing? That these racketeers are indulging in such an arrangement wherein they are seeking refund from the government or reducing their GST liability for which no actual tax has been paid to the government. So this menace was getting very much, and the tax has been introduced, GST has been introduced recently in 2017. So the Honorable Finance Minister and the government felt that this menace is going to ruin the economy because the tax is not going to come. So in order to regulate this practice, the purpose of introducing this penalty is to instill a behavior that of deterrence that no one should indulge, no one should enter into such fraudulent practices. So now the ambit is clear that this section has been introduced to bring about a behavioral change with respect to the menace of fraudulent arrangement to claim fraud GST refund or to reduce GST liability fraudulently. So what happens, for an example, Mr. A was caught by the GST authorities saying that he is indulged in the racket of fraudulent invoicing and fraudulent books of accounts. So what happened? There is an MOU between GST authorities and the income tax department. Pursuant to that MOU, GST authorities sent that information, all incriminating material found during the search and seizure on Mr. A, that we have found these fake invoices, we have these entries, we have these evidence that this Mr. A has indulged in fake invoicing and all those stuff, and has communicated not only the information but the evidences as well to the income tax department, and the income tax department investigation wing forwarded the information so received to the jurisdictional AO of the assessee. When it comes to e-proceeding, to the relevant assessing officer who would be assessing that person. So now what happened? Whether ipso facto, without an assumption of any jurisdiction under section 143(2), no proceeding was pending before the learned AO income tax under section 143(2) or 147 or 153 capital A. So whether ipso facto, on receipt of such an information, an learned assessing officer of income tax can make an order of penalty. You come, Mr. A, you have to pay the penalty because in income GST Act you have been convicted, or you have been charged, or you have been assessed as involved in fake invoicing and that racketing. The answer is a big no. Why? Because this section says that the learned assessing officer can direct only if the conclusion that the assessee is indulged in such racketing or false invoicing has to be arrived under any proceeding in the Income Tax Act, during any proceeding under the Income Tax Act. So clearly it says that the penalty can be levied. It is not necessary that the penalty can be initiated only if it is the finding of the learned AO. It can be finding of a Commissioner of Appeals. It can be finding of any other authority in the Income Tax Act. The proceeding may be pending before any other authority. So it is not necessary that the finding has to be made by the AO himself, but it can be made by any authority under the Income Tax Act, and the authorities have been defined under section 116 of the Income Tax Act. And so, and the proceedings, any proceedings being related to any income tax authority can be covered. So now we have understood the assessing officer can levy penalty only if an independent satisfaction has been brought by the income tax authorities under this act. It is not necessary that the AO comes up with the satisfaction himself, but the satisfaction has to be of any income tax authority under this act. This is clear from the phrase used, if during any proceeding under this act. Clear? Now it is found that in the books of accounts maintained by any person under this act. So now another limitation of this penalty is that the false entry or the omission of an entry has to be in the books of accounts maintained by any person. Now we will first analyze the phrase books of accounts maintained, and then we will see the correlation of this phrase books of accounts maintained with any other person. So somebody was arguing me, if a person is not liable to maintain books of accounts under Income Tax Act, suppose he is a person who is paying tax on a presumptive income, that is under section 44 AD or ADA, or under any other section under this act, wherein books of accounts are not required to be maintained, only has to pay something on his gross receipt as a certain percentage or something like that. So whether penalty can be levied on him or not, they argue because he is not required to maintain books of accounts. So since it cannot be conclusively held that he has maintained books of accounts. So my humble submission to those arguments is that, now let's read what is the meaning of this term books of accounts. Books of accounts have been defined in section 2 clause 12A of the Income Tax Act, and which is an inclusive definition. It says it includes ledgers, any other entries or printouts, cash book, any other books required to be maintained. Now read this definition in the light of section 35 of the GST Act read with rule 56 of the CGST rules. What does this say? Under an CGST Act, the assessee under CGST Act has to maintain certain books of accounts. What are those accounts? Receipt of invoices, goods, inward supply, outward supply, all these documents he has to maintain. I I believe that he is not maintaining all those, but he is regularly filing his GST returns. So whether this regular filing of GST returns, GSTR 1 and 3B, would constitute books of accounts for the purpose of this section? In my humble opinion, the answer would be yes. If we read CBI versus VC Shukla, Honorable Supreme Court. What does Honorable Supreme Court in this CBI versus VC Shukla said? That books of accounts are those accounts which are regularly maintained in the regular course of business. They have to be maintained in the regular course of business. So what happened? Here the assessee is filing regular GST returns. He is maintaining the record of GST return. So I am of the firm view that the courts may go on to hold. It is still I am saying with a caveat that the courts may go on to hold that the regular filing of GST returns is in itself books of accounts. So whether this would make any difference whether he is required to maintain books of accounts under this act or not? The answer would be no. This does not make any difference whether he is required to maintain books of accounts or not. Why? Because existence of actual books of accounts is there. So when existence of actual books of accounts being maintained by the person is there, the penalty can be levied. Another facet to this is, read it with the person, any person. Had the intention of the legislature to limit it, that only where the books of accounts are required to be maintained, the penalty can be levied. We have to read it with the phrase any person. So this is the difference. Any person, that person is defined under section 2 clause 31, and the person assessee who is required to pay tax under this act is defined under another section. So what does this say? This clearly infers that even if books of accounts are not required to be maintained and the existence of books of accounts has been established, and one of the parameters which I suggested few minutes before, what was that? The existence of GST returns, the penalty under this section can be levied. Somebody would argue, I have not maintained books of accounts, not books of accounts, GST returns, or the courts hold that GST returns are no books of accounts. Can this penalty be levied? The answer would be no, because the courts have, if courts go on to hold that GST returns are not books of accounts and actual books of accounts have not been maintained by the SSE, so penalty cannot be levied. And for this we can take reference from the Honorable Allahabad High Court decision CIT versus SK Gupta, wherein it has been held by the Honorable High Court. What did the Honorable High Court hold? That it was not in respect of this penalty. You would be saying this penalty has just come in. It was in respect of 271 capital B. It says then when the assessee has not maintained the books of accounts, you levy the penalty there for non-maintenance of books of accounts. You cannot charge him with the offense or charge him with the penalty for not getting it audited. Why? Because the first offense is not getting it maintained. The only audit comes when he's maintained it. When you come to the conclusion that he has not maintained it, there is no question of tax audit. Alright, penalty for tax audit will not be levied, because you have yourself come to the conclusion that books of accounts have not been maintained. So I firmly hold, if assessee or any person is able to prove that he has not actually maintained any books of accounts, then this penalty cannot be levied. But I am of the view, since the person who would be brought under this section would definitely be filing GSTR 1 and GSTR 3B and the returns of the time to come, so those filing of those return would themselves be covered under this books of accounts. These will be definitely called books of accounts. Now we move on further. There is a false entry. Now what is the meaning of this term false entry? These have been defined in this explanation. What it says: false entry includes use or intention to use. See, now compare it with the tense. It is found. Found in the books of accounts. Found is a past tense. Now what is it they are using? False entry includes use. Use may includes past tense or intention to use. Intention to use suggests that it is the even thought, not even the actual act. Remember, in any criminal jurisprudence, I am punished for the act which I do, not for the thought I have in my mind. Now this is a civil offense and they are charging with me a civil penalty, the so-called civil penalty, only for making a thought or making an intention or making a belief that I should use this false or falsified document. So how would the legislature or executives are going to prove that there was a search on some person and there some incriminating material was found? How they are going to prove the menes rea? Because I feel menes rea would be very much important. Whatever may be said, whatever the executive may say, menes rea is not important. But the use of the following terms, forged documents, falsified documents, itself suggests the executive would have to prove menes rea. An intention to use. Act has not been committed. False entry has not been found in the books of accounts. But the executives feel that this entry, the false document or the false invoice, was available only to be used in the books of accounts. Only to defraud the exchequer. How would the intention, something is in my mind, how would you come to know that I had this in my mind? You will come to know of my motives, of my intentions, of my knowledge only by my actions, and my actions are not there. Why? Because I have not made an entry in my books of accounts. How would you judge whether these falsified documents were intended to be used or were there a manuscript or for this educational purposes only? How is this going to be proved? The circumstances and the surrounding evidences would play a major role. And I feel the persons having, or the advocates or the professionals having good exposure in search, having good exposure in criminal jurisprudence, only those will be able to defend if the executive comes on to use the phrase intention to use. Much more weight would be required to defend this intention to use, because intention is not something which is concrete or something visible. It is something in the minds, and when somebody alleges it, it is very difficult to prove the existence or non-existence. Both is difficult. Alright, now moving further. Now you would be thinking that I have talked much about, but I have not touched upon the criminal aspect. Read the word forged or falsified documents. These two terms have not been defined in this act, but only an examples have been given. What examples have been given? Such as false invoice, or in general a false piece of documentary evidence. Whether the use of such as suggests that this false or falsified document is limited to these false evidences or false invoices, the answer is no, because such as only suggests that these are the mere examples, and if the executive wish to bring in more documents within the definition of the false and falsified or the forged documents, they are free to do it. But I would like to invite your attention of this word false or falsified document under IPC. Section 463 defines what is a forged document. Section 464 IPC 1860 defines how is making of falsified documents. So therefore, Honorable Supreme Court has time and again held therein to commit an offense under section 463 menes rea, intention. Intention is essential. Intention to cause fraud, intention to cheat, intention to dishonestly obtain certain benefit is necessary. So I firmly believe if an penalty has to be brought in under this section in the category of false entry, it has to satisfy the test provided under section 463 and 464 of the IPC. Now the question comes whether a criminal trial is necessary, because I am importing the meaning from a criminal jurisprudence, whether a criminal trial would be necessary. In majority of the cases, criminal trial would be there. Mark my words. In majority of the cases in which section 271 AD would be attracted, criminal trial would be there. But whether it is necessary, the answer comes from the interpretation of the word intention to use. Criminal jurisprudence would never ever commit you with an offense which you thought you will enter into, but you never undertook. I thought to murder somebody. Until and unless I make an attempt, it is not an offense. It is in my thoughts. It is not a crime. Thinking is not a crime. Making an attempt is a crime. So I firmly believe, or I have an inkling in my mind, that criminal trial may not be necessary in certain circumstances because of the use of the word intention to use. So false and falsified documents, do not be worried. They are very good professionals in the society who will help those people are indulged in these false and falsified documents. Do not worry. Now the second part of this false evidence is invoice without actual receipt of goods and services. I only traded in bills, something called only no movement of goods. E-way bill generated only for the books, no actual movement of the truck with the goods. The FASTag and the linking of FASTag with the e-way bill may come to a help, that is with the transport system, whether the actual movement of goods have taken place or not. So this would be very helpful if all systems have been able to integrate. Satelliting, RFID, all these things will be able to help in GST curbing that leakage. So if there is any movement without movement of invoices, no movement of goods, it is false entry. And the third is when there is a movement of invoice between a person who does not exist, meaning thereby there are certain fake companies being created, fake persons are involved who are not even existing. In the name of such persons, bills have been issued, ITC have been claimed. How do ITC would be claimed in fake persons? Because ITC was being claimed through GSTR 3B. Remember, and in GSTR 2 was not being filed, and when GSTR 2 was not being filed, the persons who were receiving these fake bills were saying, see, we have received the goods, this is the e-way bill, this is the other document, this is the payment proof, etc, etc, etc. We don't need to know whether the person is existing or not, because GSTR 2 was not required to be filed, and that need not match the GSTR 1 of the seller. It was being claimed to 3B. So this fake racketing grew up. Now this introduction of this 10% clause and that subsequent withdrawal of GSTR 2A may be a problem, but the intention of bringing the 10% clause was to limit this fake invoicing syndrome, what we call it. So now we have come up. What is the false entry? In use or intention to use for forged or falsified document. Invoice without actual movement of goods and services. Invoice to or from a person who does not exist. Now comes to the second clause. What it says? An omission of any entry which is relevant for the computation of total income of such person to evade tax liability. Now what is the meaning of this term any entry? Suppose I failed to record interest income in my books of accounts, whether this failure to record interest income in my books of accounts would entail a penalty under this section of 100%. Suppose I am a charitable trust, I failed to record interest. I failed to record interest as available in my form 26 says whether the AO would be bound or whether the AO would come up with a plea, see, you have failed to record an entry in your books of accounts, and this entry has a bearing on your computation of income, so I am introducing a penalty or levying a penalty upon you. Come up and pay 100% penalty under this section. Can an AO do that? What is the limitation of this word any entry in this section? For understanding the meaning of this term any entry, we have to understand the light in which this entry has been brought in, the company in which it has been kept in. It has been brought in the light of, as appearing from the speech of Honorable Finance Minister Shrimati Nirmala Sitharaman and the memorandum to Finance Bill 2020. It says this entry has been brought in to curb the menace, to act as a deterrence. Now when this entry has been brought in to act as a deterrence against fraudulent claim of GST, against fraudulent reduction of GST liability. So whether the meaning of this term any entry has to be limited to false entry or not. Somebody was arguing with me and saying that this entry has to be read when those fake racketing personals does not record in their books of accounts. When they does not record those entries in their books of accounts, they would be covered. My humble answer to them is that their case would be covered in entry number 1. Why? Because I have held that they are filing return of income, they are maintaining bills and vouchers, in itself is books of accounts. They does not maintain ledger, journal, etc., etc. It does not make a difference. The existence of the bills and voucher, the existence of GST return itself is a books of accounts. So that case will not be covered here. So what is the ambit of this term any entry? I would highlight and bring your attention to section 122 of the CGST Act 2017. Under CGST Act, section 122 covers 3 cases we covered below. There are around 11 cases given in section 122. 3 cases are given below. 1 case is there more. What 1 case says? When there is actual movement of goods but no movement of invoice, no invoices. If there is actual movement of goods but I have given a false invoice, that would be covered under false entry because I have recorded an entry. The questions would come up. Whose burden is to prove, whether it is the burden of the assessing officer or whether it is the burden of the assessee. These all would have to be discussed, and we will be discussing it, and I have discussed it with the criminal jurisprudence in my article, and I would invite you all to visit my article given in the description box. Please do comment. Thank you, friends. We'll meet you again in the next lecture. Thank you.